Today on the PIO podcast, I am pleased to welcome entrepreneur Italia Tornabene. Italia, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Italia, thanks so much. It's not often I get to interview anybody with the same last name as I do, so it's a real pleasure. You have what has been called to be an outstanding career. And so before we jump full into this interview about your books and your wine and your philanthropy and all that, I want to talk about your background a little bit. Tell me about your background.
What do you want to know?
What you've gone through has kind of like been the catalyst for who you are now in your career and what you're doing, right?
Definitely. Yeah, my journey's been anything but conventional. I started life facing some serious adversity. I think becoming a single mom at the age of 17 was a pivotal moment in my life, and I didn't have any I didn't come from a rich family, so they couldn't really help me financially. My mom could put a roof over my head, but that was about it. But I had to definitely pivot and figure out life. I had to grow up real quick. But through the resilience, it taught me strategic thinking, the willingness to reinvent myself, and just surviving to thriving, I guess you would say.
Yeah, and you definitely have like reinvented yourself a ton of times. All right, so let's talk about this. Your journey and how you pivoted and how you overcame the adversity that you've encountered. I think your first book was Suits to Stilettos, correct?
So Suits to Stilettos, I wrote 6 years ago, but it is not out yet.
Okay. You've written it, but
Yes.
what message do you hope the readers to get from it when they do read it?
I want to empower people, to let them know that, you can reinvent yourself. Life doesn't end when you hit bumps in the road, and you can overcome anything. You can literally become anything you want. We only live one life. If you want 10 careers in that one life, try them all out. You don't like one, move on. Just like you started a podcast, What did you do before your podcast?
I had retired. I mean, I was a cop for 27 years and I retired and I needed something to do. So I started doing this.
And I'm sure it's a passion that you love, and
Yes.
who knows what it'll bring in the future. You could be, sponsoring big brands. But
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things that you just don't know how it's going to impact people. And I've had so many people come back to me and say, "Oh my God, what you've done or what interview you did, it inspired me to do something else." And every time I hear that, I'm like, okay, I must be on the right track. I must
of
be doing
course,
something right.
I think as humans, like, we all have a purpose, right? We have one life to live here. We all have a purpose, and I think we all have our own separate journeys. But if I could put my knowledge on paper, and it's going to be here for, generations upon generations when I leave this earth, and I could pass that knowledge down to somebody else and just help people through life, that is so fulfilling. And I had a brush with death about 4 years ago, and coming out of that really, really gave me a different perspective on life and how quickly it could end. And one of the things that went through my head, I knew I was dying. And one of the things that went through my head was, wow, what are people going to say about me at my funeral? And you know how they say your life flashes before your eyes?
Mm-hmm.
It really does. And, at the time I was a stripper and I owned two businesses, which was my exit plan. I owned a grout and carpet cleaning company and I owned a commercial maid service. Our biggest contract was MGM, and that was my exit strategy from dancing. And, the injury that I had, that it changed everything for me. But it really showed me that life is short, and I decided to change my life at that time. And that's when I started writing Suits to Stilettos. Well, I was in the beginning stages of writing Suits to Stilettos, and yeah, it's taken me 6 years to finish it.
And when do you think it's going to come out?
Well, so I published it. I have one right here, but I had two people read it before I did like a mass, publishing, and they had the same questions. And I realized it wasn't clear enough. So I back to my ghostwriter and back to my editor, and I'm like, we need to figure this out. So I have the cookbook coming out, and so we're going to push it off to probably June, July, or August, around there. And then I have a I have a literary agent now, which is so exciting. It was on my vision board for the last year, and I got one of the best literary agents. So this gives him time because big publishing houses, they don't like to republish books unless you've had a massive amount of sales. And so at this pace, what he's doing is he's pitching it to big publishing houses, because if we can get it in a big publishing house, he's known for turning books into movies. So he's working on that. But the good thing is everything happens for a reason. And I think this happened because it pushed the book back enough to give him time to pitch it to big publishing houses to take it on, as well as turning it into a movie before it's published. Once it's published, they don't look at it that much. It's kind of like, we didn't get to put our name on it, you know? So this gives a great opportunity for all that to fall into place.
So with everything you're doing between, and we're going to talk about some of these things, the wine and a couple other things, all this stuff you're doing, how do you balance that creativity and strategy in all your ventures?
They're all passionate things. It's not like I am working. When I say I'm working, I'm up at my desk usually at 5 a.m. Anywhere from 5 to 5:30. I leave my desk to go to the gym. I have to force myself, by the way. I'm a gym rat. And I look at the time sometimes and I'm like, oh my God, it's 2 p.m. I haven't made it to the gym yet. I haven't eaten yet. Like today, what time is it? It's 2:10. I still haven't eaten yet today, but I don't feel hungry. I'm living off of a iced coffee over here. But I sit down to look at my emails. I'll tell myself, like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym early in the morning and I'll look at my emails and start later in the day. It never happens that way because I'll get an email that comes in and it's a high priority item. I have so much staff working for me and they're all in different time zones. I have maybe two out here in New York, but for the most part, there's people overseas, there's people in California. So when they're working, I'm sleeping or vice versa. So I have to catch up. I work 24/7. I don't, yeah,
So
but I love it. I love it. I have no complaints.
the hustle's constant for you then, no matter what. It's constant.
I have a total of, I'm going to count as being an author, a business, but I have a total of 7 businesses now.
Okay.
And two of those don't have my name. One is a cosmetic company. The other one is a nutrition and supplement company. And then I have the wine, which I just recently launched about a year ago. And
By
then
the way,
yeah,
I got a bottle right here.
I'll send you some more.
Actually, I have actually two. So I had the white and the red. My mother, who is a white wine drinker,
Yes.
loved the red wine. I could not believe it. I was surprised. We also did the mimosa, the sparkling. That is really good too.
That
Outstanding.
I'm getting it trademarked. So the whole journey with the wine, I have to tell you that because it's really funny. So
Go ahead.
I love red wine, but remember I told you I had a brush with death. So my stomach
Yes.
had to be rebuilt and I have acid reflux now. The rest of my life I have to take medication and it sucks. And I love red wine. Both my grandmothers, my great grandmother and my grandmother lived to be over 100 years old. And I asked my grandma Mary one day, I said, "Hey, what was your secret?" And she said, "A glass of red wine every night." And I never forgot it. And I'm not a big drinker. I'm not a drinker at all, really. But if I do, it's a glass of red wine. And so it took me 6 months. I actually used ChatGPT and I found out how to make red wine low acidic, what needs to happen, the whole process. I contacted every winery that you could imagine to partner with, and I finally found one. And this man has been amazing. I told him, I don't know anything about wine. I'm not a wine snob. I love wine, but like I can't tell you how to hold it. I can't tell you the legs in it. I don't care about all that. I just want people to enjoy my wine. So I made it as smooth as possible. I figured out that how to make the pH balance 3.77, which is the highest that you can to make it very smooth as you've tasted it. And now
Hmm.
it's the only wine I can drink. And I compare it to duckhorn because duckhorn is another one that I can drink. And those are the only two that I can drink. And now when I go
Okay.
out, if I'm going to have a glass of wine, I just bring my whole bottle and I just do the corkage fee. I bring my own wine now.
Yeah. No, I can understand it. It is so smooth. It is, and I would not consider myself a wine snob. My wife and I are members of a wine club. We go and have wine tastings all the time, and we enjoy it. And when you can find a red wine that has body but that's smooth and has legs behind it,
Yeah.
you know you got a good wine, and that's a good. Your wine is excellent.
They've all won 2 awards already in the biggest American wine competitions, and right now it's in a competition in the UK, so I'm super excited about that. Super
Well,
excited.
Tornabene wines is going to be amazing. I mean, as the line continues to grow,
Well,
it's outstanding.
I have to tell you how the Mimosa Magic came about. So I started with the red wine, right?
Go
And then
ahead.
I
Yep.
created a Chardonnay. So it's the same thing, the high pH. And then I told Michael, because he's really behind me in this innovation, what I'm doing with the wines. And I told him, I said, I want to create a sparkling, but I want it to taste like a mimosa. Can we do it with orange? And he was like, I have no clue. And I was like, let's figure it out. So we did it with the zest of an orange and the zest of a grapefruit. So it's just the peel, and it's the perfect amount of citrus, and it's all natural, and it's half the sugar, half the calories, because there's no orange juice in it. And it was a special order, so they had to shut down the factory to make it. And it was amazing, and it's been the biggest hit. And I think that's going to be huge. And then I have another one coming out and another white one coming out with the
My
same.
goodness.
I'm super excited about it. So we're gonna have like a limited edition strawberry one, and then
Wow.
yeah, and then also I'm still figuring out though like how to make that, because I don't want to put like strawberry syrup in it or anything. I want it to be as natural like my other lines. And then I'm gonna have a mystery white come out, and it's a white blend. And I wish I would have done that instead of the Chardonnay. It's so good. I mean, I'm not a white wine drinker. I love my Chardonnay. I'm not a white wine drinker, but the mystery white that I have coming out is so good. I mean, so good.
Oh, I can't wait to try it. Can't wait to try it. All right, so I want to switch gears here for a second. I want to talk about this other book that you have. It's Baxter Learns to Save.
Let's just say,
So
yeah,
it from what I'm reading about this, it is set to change the way children understand and interact with money from an early age, which I think is really important because I think kids have no concept of finances and money. They think it just grows on trees or mom puts a credit card in the machine and gets money. So can we talk about that?
yes, please. I grew up really, really poor, and saving was not anything my family did. My father was the breadwinner, but they would have, a 401k, and they'd pull it out for Christmas. There's five of us.
Mm.
And then, refinancing the home. And it taught me a lot when I became a mom and I started having to make a living for myself, and I hit the bumps in the roads, the ups and the downs. I said, oh my God, I don't have a savings. Nobody taught me this stuff. I made sure to teach my son right away. My sister and I, who is Sheila, who is the co-author on that, decided to come up with Baxter Learns to Save to teach children about diversifying and saving. It's so important because, they teach us in school to be corporate workers. They teach us to be robots. They teach us to be, a slave to the system, but they don't teach you how to save for yourself. They don't teach you how to create your own wealth. And I think that's something that we're missing. Financial literacy needs to be attainable for every child. I'm sure the top tier wealthy people have their children educated about finances at a very young age because they can that they have that networking. Baxter Learns to Save became such a big hit. Sheila and I decided to turn it into a series. Now, my literary agent is taking that on too. That's going to be about a year or two project, but we're going to turn it into like a Sesame Street, but just for financial literacy, kind of like a baby Einstein, but for an
Yeah,
old
I like that.
group. Yeah, so that
Yeah,
that's going to be yeah.
I think that's going to work. I mean that it every review I've read about this book, it talks about how it's engaging, how it makes it realistic for kids to navigate financial issues. I
Yeah.
mean, I I can't tell you enough about how my own kids. I mean, I've always worked with. I have three, and they're all in their 20s now. But I have worked with my kids to make sure that they saved it. They also knew the value of money. Like I made sure I told them, you get good grades in school, I will pay the big loan, but you are going to have a loan. You're going to have to pay that off. You're responsible. There's no free ride. And they did it. They got good grades and they paid off their loan. And I took care of the big loan, but they had skin in the game. If you don't teach them how to do that, how to put money away, make sure they're saving 8% or more if they can, instead of just spend and live off of credit, you're doomed.
What I started doing with my son, the first time, I really hit rock bottom, I was homeless and he was about 6 months old. But that really taught, I had nothing, no savings, nothing. And I think that was a huge, that was a very pivotal moment in my life that made me want to save the rest of my life. And those little savings that I did have really, really helped me when I needed it. So I started when my son was very young, getting like birthday presents, getting money for birthday presents. I opened an account for him when I think he was 5 years old. And I started having him put 50% of any money he ever got, even if it was a dollar, 50% away in his savings. And to this day, he still has it. He
That's
still
awesome.
has his savings, and he'll ask me for money before he even touches that. He will not touch it, and I'm so proud of him. He's 20 years old now, and he's on his third business.
Well, that's amazing. So obviously your hard financial times when you were younger, that influenced you not only to write the book, but just to 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 do what you're doing now.
Absolutely. I have multiple streams of income now, and I'll always keep that way. I plan on probably doing 10 more businesses. I won't stop. I love what I do. I won't stop. But yeah, it's so important. It taught me a lot. It's really important to have multiple streams of income and to make sure you have a buffer. At least 2 years, I say. I know some financial experts say, 6 months, some say 12 months. I say 24 to 42.
That's good advice. What practical advice would you give to parents who want to reinforce financial lessons from your book at home?
Definitely do what I implemented with my son, and that's putting 50%. I know that's a big percentage, but it teaches them like, hey, even though this was a gift, you need to save some for, the future. Or, when your children ask you for stuff at the mall or, stuff at the store, if it's not a present or something, you could teach them right there, like how much you have in your savings, how much you have in your checkings. So I had my son open a savings and a checking, and he put half in the savings, half in the checking. He understood, the value of a dollar at a very, very, very young age. And I would just teach your children to save right away and to diversify. And one other thing that happened is, I was so young when I had him that when I was going to college and he was growing up, he saw me go to college. He saw every single bump in the road that I hit. And I remember when COVID hit, I went from making 40,000 a month dancing, and he was going to the most prestigious private school in Nevada, and he was driving a BMW M5. I'm driving a BMW. We had a great life. I had enough savings put away, but nobody expected COVID to last as long as it did. So I'm paying my $20,000 a month in bills, and here comes COVID, and I'm paying it month after month because I don't want to have my credit ruined, thinking we're going to reopen in a month. And it never happened. But I remember breaking down to my son, telling him, like, this is why you do something with your life at a young age. This is why you start saving. And I explained to him, like what I could have done to have prevented this. And, nobody could have seen COVID happening. But if you have enough put away and you start at a young age building your career, you won't have to worry about bumps in the roads like this. Everybody's going to have, trials and triumphs. But, you know, as far as financial setbacks like this is a good lesson, for you to learn too. And he did. He's doing very, very well for himself.
I'm thinking back to like when my kids were kids and they would get gifts from family members, and sometimes they would get checks and or they'd get cash, and they my daughter was the one, she always wanted to go out and buy clothes and stuff.
Of course.
And if I would have said, hey, take 50% of that and put it away, yeah, that probably would have been a really good thing to teach them at the time. They know value of money, but not at that level. But that again, that's something, that's a lesson learned from what you went through as a young mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you wrote a book called Decoding Men. What is
Yeah.
this book about?
So a backstory of my career history. I started off fast food and then selling cars, and then 2008 hit. You remember that?
Hmm.
2008 hit, and I was on top of the world selling cars. Okay, let me tell you, my father did it for a living, and it was very lucrative before 2008 hit. And then when 2008 hit, I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like I just crawled out of homelessness and I'm going right back into poverty. But then I started to go to college, and I decided I actually wanted to go into law enforcement, much like you, due to some other reasons that drove me there. But you'd have to read my book to understand all that. But I decided to go into law enforcement, went to college, and then when I got my associates, I applied for the unemployment department because we were going through the financial crisis and they needed workers. Started working for the government. It wasn't what I expected it to be. I climbed the ranks to be an analyst, which was my ultimate goal. I got there and it wasn't what I expected it to be. Blew the whistle a few times and I had to get out. I needed an exit plan. I wasn't happy. And I started dancing on the side off and on since Dominic was probably, I'd say 8 months. It got me out of poverty, helped me with a court case. It really did wonders for me. And I did it off and on. But when I moved to San Diego, my son and I were living in a studio. And there I was with 3 degrees and maxing out my credit cards every month just to pay groceries and
Mm.
dealing with, and as you know, as an ex government employee, dealing with the politics
Yeah.
work. And then, it's hard when you're dealing with the drama at the work. And then you got to be a single mom when you're at home. You got to put on a smile. And then you got to figure out groceries and bills. And you're living in a studio trying to tell your son to go to college. But this is what college got you. So
Mm-hmm.
I started dancing again. And I started dancing at a club around the corner just 2 days a week and Cheetahs in San Diego. And I absolutely loved it. And I decided after my tenure to retire and decided to dance full time because what I was making on a weekend was what I was making in a month.
Okay.
All the BS. So so I was into sex work. They call it sex work, no matter if it's dancing or whatever
Right.
you
Right.
call it. So I was a sex worker for, let's say, a total of 17 years. And throughout that time, I got to the point where I was able to, if a group of bachelors walked into the strip club, I was able to pinpoint which one was my target, which one I profiled them within the first 2 minutes. Some of the bosses that I worked for, they knew my type. They would be like, we have one coming in. I just learned to really decode men, and I realized that you guys are very simple creatures, very, very simple, very, very, very simple. It's us women that are complicated, but I do think communication is key in any relationship, and love language, knowing somebody's love language and the communication and understanding is so important. So in my book, I just kind of broke it down to it's my own knowledge from what I learned from dancing and being around so many men. The complaints that I would hear are all the same. Every man complains about their women the same thing. I kid you not. I don't know if I'm free to like say it on here or not.
You could say it. You could say it. You could say it.
It's always, when they get married, they stop having sex. Or once they have a kid, they stop having sex. She's mad at me all the time. She nags at me all the time. It's always the same stuff. For the most part, notorious for leaving cupboards open, for not picking up after yourself, for leaving your clothes on the floor. I mean, this is stuff that men have the same habits because if you get a bunch of women together, they're all going to have the same complaints, just like men do. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's important for women to understand how men think. Your man may be a workaholic. There's many men out there that are workaholics. It doesn't mean he doesn't love her. It doesn't mean that he doesn't appreciate her or whatever. He's just very highly focused on work, like I am. There's just workaholics out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then there's men that they really need affection, and their love language is affection. Touch, and maybe the woman is not a very affectionate person, but you have to mold yourself to what the person that you love, what their love language is, and communicate with them and have that understanding to make your relationship work. If not, you're never going to be on the same page as that person. Once you understand what you're dealing with as far as who the man is, what they're into and stuff, that's up to you whether or not you want to change yourself to accommodate that person or be with that person. There's some men that are partiers, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you are with them. It's true because
Yeah.
there's men
Oh, you're right.
that would walk into the club and they're like, oh, I go to strip clubs, every weekend, and they have a wife at home and their wife knows that they're there. So it's just what you want to deal with. Men are going to be men. And there's some men that would never step foot in a strip club. So every man is different. It just comes down to, what you're willing to accept. And you cannot change a man. That's another misconception women have. They think that, oh, I could change him. You can't change anybody. So either accept it and deal with it and mold yourself or walk away. That's kind of what my book This is a man. And it's a very
I understand it. I do understand it, and I have a pet peeve for me, like making sure your bedroom is organized and straight, and making sure your bed's made. That is a pet peeve of mine that has gone on for decades, and I've always told my kids, "Don't leave the house without your bed being made," because when I was a cop years ago, these homes that I would go into that were turmoil, nobody had beds that were made, ever, ever, and that was a way for me to say, "Okay, I could come home now and lay in a bed that it's made up, and it's it feels different when a bed's made." And that was just my belief of having a better home, was that simple thing.
there's actually psychology behind that. Did you know that?
I did not.
There's psychology behind keeping your house in order. They say how your house looks is pretty much how your mind operates. So I'm a clean freak like you. I want my bed made every morning before I even leave my room. I have my dishes done at night before I go to bed. I vacuum and I mop every day. It's just for me, it helps me keep my mind straight. And yeah, that's the psychology behind it. But growing up, my mom was the same way. She kept the house clean all the time. And I would always ask her why. It bothered me. I always had chores, right? I'm like, who's coming over? And she said, you never know what emergencies are going to happen and who's going to walk in your house at any time. So it's funny that you say that because that is exactly how she taught me. And I've always had that in my head because it's happened. It's happened where something goes out and the handyman has to come in, or something happens and it's embarrassing because I have dishes in the sink, or I have clothes on the floor. But yeah,
Yeah, it is true. It is totally true that you never know who's going to walk in your house, so you might as well make sure it looks presentable. So I
exactly.
tell you, there was something else I saw about you, that you have moved into another project, philanthropic project called Empower Her.
Yes, yes, yes.
What is that about?
So how that came about was I was Miss New York 2024, and I always did volunteer work years ago when I was in car sales. It was just something I loved doing, was volunteering at the homeless shelter because I came from being homeless and I understood how it was. So I hadn't volunteered in a very 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 long time, years. And when I became Miss New York, that was part of the deal is you have to do philanthropy work a certain amount of hours. And I went to a homeless shelter and I was volunteering over there on a regular basis. And, I didn't like how clean it was. I didn't like the food that they were serving. I just a lot of things. And I started thinking about it from a business perspective and how I would have changed things. But I was like, there's no way I'm opening up a homeless shelter. I don't have time for that with everything on my plate, right? But I started really thinking about, how in my books, it's all knowledge based, except for Femme Fatale, but it is based on a true story. But it's all knowledge based and it's stuff I want to pass along for generations to come, especially with the Tornabene last name. And I started thinking about something that I can also pass along that is philanthropy work that I could do full time once all these businesses, take off. I would just love to help other women build businesses, single mothers, other single mothers like me, because there is other entrepreneurs out there. But the truth is, I don't care how many YouTube or Instagram shows that you watch that tell you, start a business with $1. It's impossible. You have to have money to make money. And if I wasn't a dancer and I wasn't making the money that I was when I built my first couple businesses, I would not have been able to do it. I was sometimes, robbing Peter to pay Paul. I had 65 employees that I had to write checks to, and our biggest contract was MGM, and they didn't pay out for 90 days. Who do you think covered all the expenses until they
Oh my
paid out?
goodness.
It was a lot. So, without that income, though, I would have never been able to be successful. I would have never been able to know what it's like to build a business. And I would love to have another single mother who has that entrepreneurial spirit. And most sex workers have that spirit. And I'm going to say that because they don't have a boss. It's up to you to show up. It's up to you to pay your bills. It's up to you to make a life for yourself. And if they've gotten as far as I did at that point and they have that entrepreneurial spirit, my investment in them is going to be, the funding to start their business and getting them off on their own and giving them the same connections that I have. I have great attorneys. I have great people to go on podcast to, to elevate their brand. I have great business counselors. I have great marketers, advertisers. I have a great team around me, about a team of 12, and they're all experts in what they do. I have the best of the best team. And, once I help these girls build their brands and launch them off, I can hand them off to their team where they can go find their own, but that's my ultimate goals. And it's being a business owner is very predatory. And I don't know if it's just being a woman, but I think it's any business owner because they see how passionate you are about your business and they see what needs to be done. And you don't know everything. So if I hire you and I pay you $2,000 a month to do the SEO on the back end of my website, I don't know how to overlook what you're doing. I don't even know if
Right.
you're doing what you're doing, you know?
You're trusting them.
Exactly. It has taken me a total of 3 years to learn everything. Like I can do my own Google ads, I can do my own meta ads, I could do my own SEO, I could do my own marketing, my own advertising, my own branding. I could do it all. But the problem is I'm only one person. It takes a team to do that, which is why I picked the team that I have. But at least I'm able to go in and check their work. At least I'm able to go in and say, hey, did they do this correctly? Or can you please adjust this? I just don't have time to do it. It's a full time job. And I want to be able to teach these girls all those skills and then send them off so their businesses are successful.
That's outstanding. You know what? That is a very taking the knowledge that you have and imparting to someone is probably the greatest gift you can ever give. And if you're going to empower and lift somebody up like that, giving them an opportunity where they did not have the opportunity before, that's outstanding. And especially the group, the sex worker group that's so marginalized as it is, and you know they're targeted by the banking industry and so on, and it's yeah. So what you're doing is great work. I really truly appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, I've never gotten one
But
loan, not one
I
loan for
really, I really like the wine though. I really like the wine. Tornabene
me.
wines, everybody. It's awesome stuff. I love the wine. It's
How,
awesome. Yeah, no, it's amazing. All right, so tell you, is there a question I should have asked, and if so, how would you have answered it?
no, I think I can't think of.
Your book, Femme Fatale. Talk about that.
Okay, so Femme Fatale. You would understand this as an ex-cop, but Femme Fatale is actually based on a true story. And in the sex work industry, there's a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, and a lot of girls get into the industry at a very young age and make very poor choices. And unfortunately, they can go down one or two roads. It's kind of like a fork in the road. So I started at a later stage in life because I was doing it off and on. But when I went into it full time in San Diego, I was already in my late 20s. So I would say I was fully developed. I wasn't going to make any decisions. I'm not a drinker. Like I said, I don't do drugs. I'm pretty square. So when I walked into the industry, when those things were offered to me, it didn't appeal to me. I met another woman who was a single mother, not by choice. Her sister committed suicide and she was left with her daughter. So she
Oh,
became a
goodness.
single mother, not by choice, and she was an accountant for Albertsons. And so her and I were very similar. We had our day jobs, and then we were trying to juggle being a mother, at night and on the weekends, but not making enough to survive, especially in San Diego. So we met up and, just by coincidence, working at the same club, we spoke every day. We became best friends. And then she started pulling away from me, and I thought I did something. I wasn't sure what was going on. And then she broke down to me one day and she told me that she was doing coke and drinking and then doing pills to sleep at night. Like she just had this cycle going on. And then she
Hmm.
told me she felt like she sold her soul to the devil and she kept trying to stop and she couldn't. So then I told her, I said, come work day shifts with me again. Because we used to work day shift. Night shift was always rowdy. And we used to work day shift together because, it had just aligned with our schedule better. So I understood what she was saying, where she would take the uppers to stay up at night and then the downers to, I understood what she was saying. And it was a nasty cycle that she was in. And she kept trying to pull out of it. Eventually, the club got shut down. She went to a different club. All of the girls kind of split, but we stayed in contact every day. She met a military guy and she, I guess, was still doing, the things that she was doing. And she married this man and shot herself the next day with his gun. I'll
Oh,
never understand it. Yeah, I'll never understand it. But I was at the new club that I was at dancing, and all the girls from the old club came in to see me. I just happened to be on stage when they walked in, and it was so exciting to see them. And I had no clue the news that they were coming to bring me. And they told me what had happened. I didn't believe it. I left the club. I went to her club. Her manager was actually an ex-cop, and he sat me down and he said, it is true. And I showed him a picture. I said, there's no way. There's no way. He said, yeah. So I wrote Femme Fatale based off of that story. And her name really was Olive. And it's just me becoming an escort and climbing up the ladder and going after all the cartel that deals all the drugs and assassinating them during our sex acts. So it's kind of my alter ego of what I could have done if I could have gotten away with it. I would
There
have
you
went
go.
after everybody that sells it, everybody that deals it, everybody that introduced it, like so I climb up the ladder in this in Femme Fatale, and I, assassinate all these people along the way during our sex acts. And it's really cool because I have law enforcement chasing me, and then I have, some people that are against me, some people that are for me, and people are still trying to figure out if these are drug deals gone wrong or if this
That's
is
awesome.
good. Yeah, it's really cool. It's
It's
actually it's climbing to be the bestseller really, really, really quick. I'm like watching the list, and I'm like, oh my gosh, because it's selling
That's
really, really
awesome.
well.
Well, we'll talk. We'll get that out there. I'll have to get a copy of it and talk about it. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So let's change this up, Italia. Let's go to some rapid fire questions.
All right, let's do it.
Texting or talking?
Texting, unless it's
Movies
important.
or books?
Books.
Coffee, tea, or energy drink?
I'd have to say tea and iced coffee. I have my iced coffee in the morning, but I love my hot tea.
Adult drink of choice?
Wine, obviously.
Cats or dogs?
Cats. I have Chloe. She's my baby.
There you go. What's your favorite go-to karaoke song?
Man, I feel like a woman by Shania Twain.
There you go. If you could instantly become an expert in one thing, what would it be?
It would be film production.
Yeah.
To turn my movies, my books into movies.
There you go. If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Oh, time travel.
That would be fun. Ask permission or beg for forgiveness?
Beg for forgiveness. That's been my motto my whole life.
True Tornabene, all the way. What place you most want to travel to?
The Maldives, and that's actually going to be my future retirement spot. So I've been manifesting it for a couple years now.
What's your favorite way to relax after a long day?
Wine, candles, and a book. And
if you could choose, there you go. If you could choose to have coffee with any historical figure, living or dead, who would it be? Somebody else said that the other day. Very cool, yeah. All right, Italia, what key points would like our listeners to take from today's interview besides the wine? I'm going to say that again, the wine. Yes, good stuff.
Wine. Resilience is everything. I think that's really important, and you can overcome anything. I want everybody to know that, and it's so important. That's kind of the legacy I want to live behind.
Awesome.
You can reinvent yourself over and over again. Invest in yourself, your mindset, your skills, and your future is a huge investment. This year, I have dedicated so much for the entire year to invest into myself and my skills. It's just so important for growth. We all have to, and you don't have to follow the rules. Nobody has to follow the rules. You create your own path. I created mine, and I was very successful at it. I'm not done yet. I'm going to build a Tornabene empire. But you don't have to follow the rules, and that's why Tornabene wine. Our motto is to step outside the lines. You don't have to be conventional. Create your own path. Be unique. Be iconic.
I love it. And Italia, if people want to reach out and they want to buy your wine, or they want to learn more about what you do, or they want to help finance a project, how do they do that?
Just head over to my Instagram at Italia Tornabene, and you should see all the links on there, and then tornabenewine.com. So you can go to the wine, and there is a link to the nonprofit.
And that's outstanding. Italia, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate you so much.